In the last month, I've created 4 mobs, each increasing in scale to see what is the largest possible size that a mob can be before it becomes impossible for Minecraft to handle. Did I mention I'm not using any mods? Now, the largest current mob in Minecraft is the Ender Dragon, and so to test the waters, I decided this would be a good scale for our first mob. So, I opened up Blockbench and began to work. Now, if you don't know how to use Blockbench, here's the rundown. Blockbench allows for me to create models for any mob that I want to make in Minecraft, whilst the Minecraft Entity Wizard extension makes it so that I can use a mob to act as the base behavior while using code to change how that behavior acts within our custom mob. Alright, that's about it. So, I doubled the size. Anyway, our mob still needed a design, and luckily, I had a comment for an easy idea. An ice dragon. This would allow us to see the design in a similar light to the original. However, no one likes a copycat, and so I looked into cool animals for inspiration, and unsurprisingly, I landed on the walrus. Using this design, I created the mob and even did a short about it. Now, the mob's behavior is similar to the Phantom, in that it flies around and attacks the player. However, it doesn't burn in the day, and it gives slowness to the player when attacking. It's a pretty simple mob, except I gave it an army of these guys, which I called the Nibblers, which would attack from the ground. These guys should be easy, as the hardest part of them is just having them spawn from the dragon naturally. So, as long as I don't do something dumb, it should go fine. So, first time around, they turned invisible. And no, that's not an invisibility potion, that just happened. But I used the silverfish as a base for it, so maybe that's the problem, and so I changed it. Bam! These guys are all bark, no bite! Third try, no! Fourth time around, it just worked. Without animations, but at least worked. I have no idea what I did. Most of the time I was just testing if the model would work. But here it is, my ruined mental state. After this mob, I decided to go in a different direction with the next one. Since the ice dragon was in the skies, I decided to create a mob more focused on the ground below. And so, I decided to take this attempt to create a creature that would be extremely wide. And so, I looked through my comments again and came across a suggestion on how I could have improved one of my favorite mobs, by having it appear sort of like a turtle with a sandstone shell. The design worked perfectly with the idea, and so I began work on a mob I would call the Sandstone Snapper. Now, for this mob, I wanted it to be a large threat despite its length, and so the plan was for it to deal a large amount of damage to any player that was brave enough to go closer. Except, this mob never managed to reach that stage in development due to one fact. I went way too far. This attempt, I decided to push Blockbench to its limits in terms of how wide a mob could go. And so, I built the mob just below the limits of Blockbench's view. That made this mob hundreds of blocks wide. Now, without the hitbox, the game ran fine, but the character would unload while you were still within it. So, I made the hitbox bigger, and it struggled. Now, the game was still running, and even though the frame rate tanked there was no way that this one hitbox would crash it. But this was a huge success in terms of progress, and while the Sandstone Snapper currently ended here, I gave it a small podium in its memory with a smaller mob to represent it. Moving on, there was one last thing I needed to test, as we had tested width but not height. Now, you're probably thinking, why? What's the real difference? Well, all my mobs are being made in Minecraft Bedrock Edition, which, unlike Java Edition, has the height limit as a physical barrier instead of just an edge on how high you can build. So I needed to test if a mob could breach the height limit. And what better design to take than just the Enderman that's already in the game. Okay, so to make sure this mob actually looked okay, I made sure that the head and torso were larger than an ordinary Enderman, and gave it green eyes because I liked the color. With the design done, I named the Tallman. Anyway, this version of the mob was hilarious to watch, but I feel like it needed more detail on its legs. And so I began work on giving this mob the incredibly rare gift of knees. Now, the height of this mob is 128 blocks tall. Or larger, I'm not quite sure, but it proved that the real damage dealer to Minecraft's performance would be the width. And I had a plan for our final mob. But before I explain my plan on how the final mob will break Minecraft, I'd like to ask something of you. This is the first long-form video I've ever done, and I plan on uploading videos like this in the future instead of just YouTube Shorts. So, to support my future videos, please like, comment, maybe subscribe, as it would truly help with the future of my channel. But without further ado, here is the final plan. For this mob, it had to be pretty simple in size, as I wanted it to fill out a full cube in the Blockbench mob editor. And so I decided that this mob would have a similar design to the slime, in that it would have an outer layer that would act as the main hitbox for the mob. However, within, it would contain several inner layers until it eventually reached the core of the mob. Within the outermost layer of this mob would be items from Minecraft, such as a dirt block, a fence post, a pig, and more. I named this mob the Void Slime, which would be able to fly just so it could exist within the space between the End Islands and the main island, where the Ender Dragon lives, as this was the area that the mob would be spawned. Now, in the space where this video first started, I spawned the mob to see if Minecraft would be crashed by its presence. However, deep in my mind, I knew the mob would not be enough. So, I placed my hope into one final trick up my sleeve. Like the original slime, our mob could split into more versions of itself when it took damage. And so, I damaged the slime, causing it to split into 10 different variations of itself. And once this occurred, there would be no going back.